Hello and welcome to episode 216 of the Awesome Comics Podcast, a place where the small press makes one hell of a big noise. I'm Vince Hunt, creator of The Red Mouse from Mars, and joining me this week are the creator of Vanguard, Dan Butcher.
Hello.
And the writer behind Cockney Kung Fu and many more to come, Mr. Tony Esmond.
I haven't been getting any original ones. I used to like it when you
I've
were like
changed
really
it up
old.
for these few weeks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, for these specific set of shows.
I'll go back to insult.
I attempted to try and be professional with our intros, and then probably about 30 seconds after I've introduced you both, it just goes completely out of the window.
Last week it got off the rails a bit.
Oh, big time.
It went off the rails, and we need to get it back on the rails because these shows are getting a few listens. So thank you to everyone that's been listening to for the past few weeks, because we have been doing a bunch of shows focused on the comic book making process.
Yep.
From stage 1 to, well, you'll find out what the stages are as we go on.
From first base onwards.
Yeah, see? Told you, about 30 seconds, wasn't it?
What? Just a baseball analogy. Does that make it sexy?
Yeah, but thank you to all our listeners, whether you be old, new, or just checking out one show. I hope you enjoy this. And we're back for another stage this week, but we'll get onto that in a bit, and it's quite exciting.
Yeah.
And it's a stage that I think quite a lot of our listeners and a lot of creators out there have attempted or know a lot about, and would certainly know if it isn't done very well, because we're talking about lettering this week. But before we get into that good stuff, do you know where else you can find good stuff?
Comic House.
Yes, Danny Butcher. He's the man when it comes to when it comes
reading
to
out what's on Comic House.
Yeah. When it comes to seamless segues, and Comic House are the best when it comes to indie comic, the indie comic marketplace.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, and they are our sponsor. Yes, if you go to comichouse.com, you can see there's a huge selection of titles on the database and stuff you can get there. I mean, there's a lot of creators that are hosting their books on there that you can buy hard copies, a lot of self-published stuff. But they also have an app that we push, and we also read all the time. So, and they're updating it with loads of stuff all the time. What's on there at the moment, Dan?
Well, one of the things you can also do for the app is buy print copies of the comics that are on the app. And some of those, the featured print titles, we've got Flintlock Issue 3, High Priestess Volume 1, City of Lost Souls Volume 2, Toothpick Issue 1, The Forbidden Wolf 3 Part 1, The Catalyst, Peace of Mind, and To Kill the Past. And there's a whole slew of other titles. You can even get the Awesome comic through there.
Yes. Which I keep meaning to put the last issue on. So, I'll tell you what, we'll put it on this week, and then you can check out Comic House. If you go to comichouse.com, you can find out about a 14-day free trial. And the actual service itself is only £3 a month, so that's the price of a normal monthly comic. And we all know that you've got like pull lists that are absolutely massive. Or if you like Tony, they're just absolutely No, you won't actually tell us the numbers of you.
Unwieldy. I'm probably 20-30 books a week.
Yeah.
Wow.
Has that cut down because you read a bit more digitally now?
Maybe a little bit. Maybe a little bit.
I feel there's a bit of a bigger conversation to be had about this at some point in the future, and we've been throwing quite a few good ideas for future shows about over the past few days. So
is there one you're getting but not reading, but you're just getting it because you're keeping the collection up?
There's a few. The current Punisher series is not the mini series. The current Punisher series, the art in it is just unreadable.
That bad.
Yeah, it's just like silhouettes drawn round of photographs, and it's just awful. I know Vince Bond on 11 O'Clock Comics has just been like poo-pooing it as well, and I feel the same way. I did one of those tweets where I put a load of the artwork out and went, "What on earth is this?" And then I cancelled it because I felt bad.
Yeah. So don't spend your money on not necessarily that series, but any comic like that makes you feel like that. Instead, put your £3 a month to a subscription to Comic House, and then you can check out our comic, Awesome Comics, because there's 4 issues on there, and it's a complete story.
Than a comic.
And why wouldn't you want to read our comic? Because we're desperate for affirmation.
Yeah, and comics have just gone up in price as well in a lot of shops, haven't they?
Yeah,
Not everyone, but a lot of them have, because of the exchange rate. They've hiked the prices up again, which I understand. The comic shop, I don't. My problem is with the actual price of the original product being too high, and I think that's a big factor. There's many factors so why sales are down, but I think that's one of the main ones. But I don't feel bad for the comic shops. I'm not going to have a go at them because I think they've got to survive. But
go support your comic shops.
On the plus side of the exchange rate, if you're an American creator and you want to hire a Brit, it's a lot cheaper.
It is.
So consider hiring some of the small press talent that you can find in the UK, because you'll get your artwork, your pages done for a lot lower rate, and you get a lot more of it.
Unless you're listening to this in about 50 years in the future, then we're all under the sea.
Yeah, I paid an American creator today. It was very noticeable. Yeah.
But ouch, yeah. I was looking. There's a comic I follow, and I was gonna. It's a web comic they've printed, and the price was relatively expensive, but like the shipping on top was over the cost, well over the cost of the book.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Yeah. This is like.
That's why like I can't buy like T-shirts and stuff. I used to order T-shirts from the States, like cool horror T-shirts and things like that from the States. Yeah. It costs more like for shipping and then customs.
Just ship the fucking thing.
Yeah, customs is a different ball game altogether as well now.
I wonder. There's a couple of American Kickstarters I backed. One is 14 months old now, and I've paid for it now, haven't I?
Yeah.
So, and that's a big a sort of hardback book or a big trade. I wonder if he's going to ask for more money. He's going to be out of pocket for.
Well, that's on them, isn't it?
Oh.
Yeah.
You can't sort of, if you paid for a service at a time and they let that expire, it's on them surely. To pick that cost up.
Oh dear.
There's actually a video on YouTube by a chap named Daniel Ibbotson, and it's like 5 crazy comic Kickstarters, and I watched it through, and one of them was that guy who burnt all the comics.
Oh yeah. So Sullivan Sluggers, is that the one I'm thinking?
No, it's Stories for Sad Children.
Oh yes, sorry. Yeah.
And it's just like, bloody hell. Okay, he kind of had issues with depression, and then he burnt.
That probably helped.
Yeah. Apparently there was like forum posts where he had said he didn't have depression. He was just sick of it, and he only claimed that for money. I was like, oh god, this is great. This is a literal fucking fire.
When I'm depressed, I read comics or I listen to the Awesome Comics podcast. That cheers me up.
Exactly.
Perhaps
that's a pull quote for our own show. You can't.
Should listen to this.
Yeah. And we're and after all that depressing talk, we're here to cheer you up this week. Yeah. Especially if you like making comics. So, we've got a bit to talk about after this little interview you're about to get now. But let's get stuck into some comic book making process talk with our guest. Oh, you'll find that out in a second. Right then, it's part 4 of our focus on the comic making process. A bunch of shows that we're having immense fun making, and we've had some great chats with a lot of creators so far, and we're very excited about this chat this week. So we've been through the writing, the art and colouring process, and this week we're shining a light on the lettering process. Now, we've spoken a little bit about it before, and anyone who's read a comic with bad or unpolished lettering will know how much it can affect a finished book, or sometimes just downright ruin it. And we've all, let's face it, we've all had that experience where lettering affects your reading, doesn't it? So, we thought to talk about the process and the thinking and how to do it, and if you're a wannabe letterer or if you want to make your letters better, who best to talk to? So we decided to get in an Eisner-nominated comic book letterer with an ever-growing list of credits to his name. If you're an indie comics fan, there's a good chance you've read a title he's lettered. All of us on this show have read. I keep seeing his name all the time.
Out, Jim.
Yeah, and that name is Jim Campbell. Welcome to the show, sir.
A pleasure to be here.
Hi, Jim.
Hey, man.
Hello.
A pleasure to be here. We'll see if he continues that in an hour. So Jim, I mean, how long have you been a letterer now?
It's 11 years. It was almost exactly 10 years when I went the anniversary when I went to New York Comic Convention last year.
Oh, okay.
Which is a bit frightening. Although, to be fair, the first sort of 3 years, you probably didn't see anything that I did. So,
why was that? Why?
Well, because it was oddly specialist. I completely randomly. Well, actually, not completely randomly. I have to say. Bless him, Mike Collins put me forward to a company called Classical Comics, who were making comic book adaptations of basically GCSE set texts.
Okay.
For sort of the I think you could describe as the less enthusiastic reader.
Right, yeah.
And they did difficult texts, and it does make a difference. I think when I first decided, I'd been doing it for fanzines, little fanzines for a couple of years at that point. I thought, I could probably do this professionally. And I think it was because I'd had some contact with Mike through the, no idea how long ago, was the old 2000 AD Usenet group.
Okay. What fanzine doing back then?
I contacted Mike and said, what's the going rate for a page of lettering? Because I'm going to start trying to get work, and I have no idea. You don't want to go in and say, well, I'd like £40 a page, and they go, we don't pay our writers that,
Yeah.
So I didn't have a clue what to pitch at, and so I started pitching with very little success. And Mike, bless him, was doing some work for Classical Comics, and I think one of their current letterers had dropped out to do something else, and he suggested me, and I got an email out of the blue from the guys at Classical and said, do you want to try out one of our books? And I said yes. And so I did that for about the first 2 years. I did more or less nothing but Classical Comics.
But that's a good sort of learning curve to start with something like that, isn't it? Really.
And I'll be honest with you, it was hard. I mean, you're lettering, Shakespeare, and I think the only book that most people would have seen that they did a very, very good adaptation of Dracula, the novel.
Oh wow!
Staz Johnson drew.
Oh, nice! Great. He loved the vampire as well, Staz.
And if you haven't seen it, try and find it. The books are all still in print, because I didn't realise when I signed. I only found this out. I didn't realise when I signed the contracts, because as a letterer you don't really look at the contracts because you just do expect to be on work for hire. But they put me on a 1% royalty, so I know the books are all still in print because I get royalty statements, and every once in a while I actually get some money out of them.
Awesome.
I mean, they're all good books. But I think the Dracula one would probably appeal to more comic fans because it's much more, because the way Staz has drawn it's much more comic-y. And Jason Cobley did the script adaptation. It's really, really good.
Oh, I have to check that one out.
What were the fanzines, Jim? You mentioned, was it the 2000 AD Zarjazz and stuff like that? Was it? Or...
I did a little bit of stuff for Zarjazz. Mainly, I started off doing stuff for. And again, this shows my age. I don't know if any of you even saw Violent, which was the tribute to Action.
Yes, I do. I think I got that.
Yeah, I was sort of, and that was again born out of the 2000 AD Usenet group, and
right,
and that was where I started from. Was I was looking at the, I mean, this is like the very back end of the 90s, and I was looking at the British fanzine scene, which was incredibly rich, and had lots of really good writers and lots of really good artists. I mean, I'm not being funny. I mean, although he was working professionally for quite some time, that first issue of Zarjazz of Violent had a strip by Simon Fraser. Right. It had a strip written by Gordon Rennie under a pseudonym, one by Paul P.J. Holden. Right. And I was looking at a lot of this stuff, and I was thinking, these people, the only thing that stops these strips from looking like professional strips is the shitty lettering. Right. And I was working as a graphic designer at the time, and I was doing all this stuff on the computer. And I'd been a bit disconnected from comics for a few years, except 2000 AD, which is the only thing I was reading regularly, and the 2000 AD news group. Right. And I hadn't realised how much of comics had gone, and lettering at that stage was already going digital.
Yeah.
But I was a graphic designer, and I was doing a lot of work in Illustrator, and I thought, do you know what? I reckon I could probably simulate an awful lot of this in Illustrator. So, sort of completely off my own bat, right at the start, I say I designed my own fonts. I didn't design my own fonts. To my eternal shame, I essentially stole Annie Parkhouse's lettering. I scanned it all myself and made a font out of it. Right. And it's terrible. It was absolute rubbish, which is why I buy all my fonts now, because making fonts is
tough.
The most tedious job I can imagine. I have no idea how the guys at Comicraft and Blambot do it. It's a horrible, horrible job. You do all the big letters, you do the alphabet, and that's fine, okay, and then you do it again because most lettering fonts have two versions of the capitals.
Yeah.
Then you do your numbers, and by that stage, you've done what, 50. You're up to sort of, and the big sort of, the main typesetting characters that you get when you press Shift and a number.
Yeah.
And that stage you're up to 70, 75, 100 characters, and then you're like semicolons.
And then you start to get nosebleed and like.
For Christ's sake, have you ever tried designing an ampersand? It's horrible.
I made my own font, and when I got it back, it was so awful. it looked like a child's writing, but now I use it as like a child's writing.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Oh,
so were there any letterers you sort of looked up to at the time, Jim, when you started? I suppose you must have been in 2000 AD. It must have been sort of Tom Frame and all these sort of guys. Was it?
God, yeah. I was coming at this, and I've always come at this, and this is the sort of thing that people sort of occasionally people make some reference to my lettering style, and I don't understand that, because all I'm doing is, back when I was I would call a sort of a proper comics fan, when I was spending an inordinate amount of my monthly paycheck on comics every month.
Yeah.
I was, and the only reason I'm not a comics fan, it's just, you spend probably 60 hours a week working on comics. I have to say, you don't have a huge amount of free time, and with the best will in the world, I don't want to spend all of it reading comics. I'm literally what I do every single working hour of the day. So I don't read as many comics now. But back then, I was spending a lot of money, and I was so when I approach any lettering job back then, an editor's job was to find a letterer whose style matched the strip, what you wanted to do with the strip.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Now, obviously, being digital, and because we've all got access to all these fonts and all these different lettering styles, now I think it's the letterer's job to find a style that matches the.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So I don't think I have a style. Whenever I'm offered a new strip, a new project, my first thought is, well, if I'm sort of casting my mind back to when I was, inverted commas, a proper fan, what letterer would I like to have seen on this book?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll look at some things and I'll go, well, that I would have loved to see John Workman letter that. So I'm going to do something that I'm never going to be John Workman. You can't be John Workman or Todd Kline or Tom Orzechowski or any of those people. But what you can look at it is and you think, well, that's the letter I would have put on this book. So I'm going to think about their style, and I'm going to try and bring something of that. I'm going to pick a font that at least reminds me of their work, and then I'm going to try and bring something of what they brought to this, because that's the letter I would have liked to see on this book, and then you just hope to God the editor agrees with you.
It's weird, actually. I was researching letterers today, Jim, and when you say John Workman, I realised that he's the letterer who did Grimjack, and he did Cosmic Odyssey, and he did Scout, and I'm thinking there's definitely, that is really reminiscent of the style for me. It may be the whole comic as a whole, but there's certainly something of a vibe that comes out from the written word that you're reading sometimes, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if I was in charge of comics, the one thing I would do is I would set aside a huge chunk of money, and I would make sure that Walt Simonson made comics for as long as he wanted to. John Workman lettered all of them.
Yes, I think he's neither favourite, isn't he? He uses him on a lot of stuff.
If you see, and you look at well, Simonson and Workman's Thor.
Yeah.
And I can't think of two styles that sit together more completely than that. And and obviously the Simonson's doing Thor Ragnarok, and John Workman's lettering that by hand, which nobody does anymore. And it looks lovely. Yeah. It looks absolutely amazing.
There's a quality of the line almost that they share.
Yes,
it's a weird thing to talk about, isn't it? Yeah, it's very strange. Yeah.
And then that's the conceit in my head, is that I sort of, I kind of think if the lettering almost looks like the artist might have done it themselves.
Yeah.
And that's what you get with Workman. As you say, there's something about the line weight when he works with Simonson that they just sit together perfectly on the page.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost like you kind of, I always find the letterer, it's like you're playing in an orchestra, but you don't know what instrument you have to bring along to fit in. And because sometimes I've tried to letter some of my own work and some of others, and I can't seem to get the right look or the font or the size or the shape. It's definitely a skill, I think, that's kind of not appreciated enough, because it certainly sticks out when it's wrong.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, it's one of the things that drives me slightly potty, because you see it so much on the internet. Everybody goes, "Oh, lettering's easy now because it's all done on computers."
No.
And you kind of go, if that was true, there wouldn't be any bad lettering.
Yeah.
And I'm not being funny. 20 seconds looking at webcomics will prove that's not true.
Yeah.
Not all webcomics, Jim.
No, not all webcomics. But I'm thinking that's the first place that a lot of people go to, and that's the first corner that they cut.
Yeah.
Because there's they're not expecting to make any money. They're literally doing it.
Yeah.
For love, and that's fine. But it astonishes me that people look at something that they've done, and then not look at a page of a comic that they love and think, do you know what? My lettering doesn't look as good as that.
Yeah. And I think a lot of like creators as well, certainly for all those, and there's more and more that are like doing everything off their own back, you know. So they'll do the writing, the art, the colouring. There's a lot of one-man bands out there, and they just sort of think that lettering is it's just the final little bit I need to do. Whereas it's not. It's as important a process as everything that's come before.
Yeah.
And certainly, like you say, with a lot of these sort of, you know, a lot of these web comics, that sometimes the art looks rushed anyway, but you can tell when someone's rushing lettering, or just not thinking about it, or you know, just not
understanding the principles of it, you know, the concepts of it.
I mean, yeah,
and to be fair, this is one of those things. I do feel sorry for people to an extent about it. Is they're using the wrong software.
Yeah,
and it is unfortunate that there is quite a high bar to it.
Yeah,
because you can get away with it in Photoshop, but that's not cheap.
Yeah.
But a lot of the stuff that, you know, like Comic Life and all this kind, you can't do it. Yeah. And with the best will in the world, Clip Studio, which is by far the best tool, digital tool for drawing comics, by far, its lettering tools are rubbish. They are awful.
Yeah. So for you,
and I feel terrible. You know, you'll see people saying, like, you know, I've invested in Clip Studio, and I'll go, no, you've done absolutely the right thing. You know, I can't argue with it from a drawing point of view, but you can't letter worth a damn in it. I'm sorry, it's horrible.
So what do you think is the premium tool for lettering then? What do you think is the premium tool, the number one that
what everybody uses professionally is Adobe Illustrator.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's just the industry standard.
That's good. That's what I use. What about? But some people use InDesign as well, though.
InDesign, letterers hate it. It makes the production process a lot easier, and there's quite a lot of pressure from some corners. Especially, I mean, anybody who does any work in manga, it's all done in InDesign.
Oh, really?
Okay.
But a lot of letterers absolutely hate it, because there are some things that are harder to do and some things that are impossible to do in InDesign. And so you have to make a lot of choices that aren't creative. They're based on the restrictions of the software.
Right, okay.
You can totally do it. I've done it, but I don't like it. You know, because a lot of the time I'm thinking, well, you know, I could make a much better sound effect if I wasn't doing this in InDesign. I could do, you know...
Right.
Most of the tools are there, but not all of them. I will say people... this is my sort of a bit of a hobby horse, because I don't want to be recommending Adobe, because I think the whole Creative Cloud thing's an absolute con.
Oh God,
yeah. An expensive con.
There is a big shortage of other packages, but I will say the Affinity Designer is 99% there.
Okay.
And that's a one-time payment. It's made by Serif, who've been making desktop publishing software for donkey's years.
Yeah.
They've got this little suite. They've got Designer, Photo, and Publisher, which are their Photoshop, InDesign, Photoshop, and Illustrator.
Yeah. And I know that's been growing year on year. So I think if you're looking to sort of pick something up to learn that, and like Jim says, if it does the job, then it's probably a good idea to learn that now, because it does seem to be it's getting bigger rather than being a flash in the pan. I've
been testing it. I mean, I've been beta testing Designer since it was in beta.
Yeah.
And because I've got 25 years, I think, of Illustrator muscle memory built into me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I've not taken the plunge and tried to do a full job using Designer.
Yeah.
But every time they put out a new version, I see what new features are and I check them, and I know, because in the back of my head I've got this thing. Adobe know they've got this monopoly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in the back of my head, I've got this thing where it's like, well, what happens one day when they come back and they say we're putting the monthly sub up by 25%? What if they actually finally did something that pushed me so much that I really had to just say, no, screw you? And I know from having done the testing, if I had to, I could move my workflow to Designer tomorrow.
Okay.
It would be like pulling teeth, and it would.
Yeah.
I would produce half the number of pages a day that I do now.
For a while, though, you get into it.
While I was getting back into, but I know that the stuff that I need to do, I could do in Designer. So that's my sort of my parachute, my escape plan. If they actually lose the plot, so.
You said about your workflow, you can push out 8 to 9 pages an hour of lettering.
An hour?
It depends. That's on a good day with a good script and an artist who knows what they're doing.
Right. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And that's
So
with a bit of preparation time as well. Is that right?
Yeah.
Sorry?
Jim, so is that with preparation maybe on the previous day? I think you wrote about that.
Prep is done separately. I will prep because I try by the end of any given week. I try and have the whole of the following week planned out. I know what I'm doing. The deadline's going to a calendar. I know what I'm doing.
Right.
So at the end of every day, when you're starting to feel a bit frazzled, prep is something you can do mechanically. I can do it on a laptop sitting in front of the telly. I don't have to pay a huge amount of attention to it.
Yeah.
So what I'll do is any given day, once I've finished today's book, I prep tomorrow's.
Because when you say prep, what do you
what's
do?
that involved?
That's, you make sure you've got the artwork downloaded from wherever it's got to be downloaded from. You put the artwork on the page, you open the script up, you make sure that the script's formatted how you want it, you copy it, the text out of the script, you paste it onto the page, you save the page down so that in the morning it's ready to go. It's ready to letter. There's nothing you need to do except start lettering it, if you see what I mean.
So moving stuff around the following day is the main part.
That's what where you start putting it in balloons, start putting it on a page, start to make the text into attractive shapes and worrying about what the sound effects look like and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. But also because you've prepped all the pages for the book, you've got a sense of what the book looks like. There's no surprises lurking. I can't quite understand. There's some people's workflows, basically they do every single page one at a time.
Right.
I'm thinking to myself, well, I need to know if there's a surprise lurking at the back of this book.
Yeah.
You know, if there's, you know, if because writers are terrible at putting this stuff into scripts.
Right. They like to surprise the artist.
Mystery character B, who's been speaking from the shadows all issue, is at the end of the issue revealed to be really character so-and-so, and you gave him a special dialogue balloon in the issue before.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
that makes sense.
It will feel to the reader like cheating. They're going to say, "Well, how did I not know that was that character? Because you know, he's got a special dialogue style, and just because he's speaking from the shadows, why has he not got his special?" And it's difficult, and so you need to you kind of need to know that before you start the book.
Yeah.
But at least if nothing else, you can email the editor back and say, "Well, you know, you do realise that we gave this guy a special dialogue style the issue before, and now he's supposed to be speaking from the shadows and unidentified. How's that supposed to work?"
Yeah.
I remember reading the letter saying that you shouldn't give or try not to overwork giving special fonts to certain characters because it ends up being a pain. Yeah,
absolutely hate it. And the thing is, I mean, we don't hate it because it makes things difficult. We hate it because we're also designers.
Yeah.
I keep saying to people, well, just imagine for a second that you were reading a novel. And every second character in a page of conversation had a different font.
Oh God!
Right,
I'll be honest with you. I was reading. There's a couple of Terry Pratchett's where he does that.
Right.
And I think it looks horrible on the page. I can't remember which one. One with the golems. There's one with golems, and has a different font on the page. It's not like Death, who's all caps. That's fine. I'm fine with that. It's the same font. You've just done something different. You've treated the type differently.
Yeah.
But the golems have a different font on the page, and immediately just smacks me in the eye, and I just go, "Why is that a different font? It looks horrible."
Yeah, I can understand that.
I mean, I get, you know, it's fine. It's that thing. It's that thing with the in the Incredibles when everybody's special, nobody is.
Yeah.
I get it. When you've introduced your absolute biggest, baddest character, then maybe you want to give them a special treatment. But
do you get a writer?
It's got to have a rocky font, and the Human Torch has got to have a fiery font, and Mr. Fantastic's got to have a stretchy font, and then you're just like,
it's got an invisible font.
An invisible font.
Speak up, Sue. I can't hear you.
Do you find that writers though they'll put in the script stuff like, "This bloke's a psycho. Can we give him a weird font?" Do you get that sort of thing often, or? This bloke's an alien.
It does pop up in scripts, and I tend to try and be invisible in the process because you are at the end of the chain. Everybody is now bumping up against the print deadline. You're conscious of the fact that you don't really want to be having extended conversations because everyone's just looking at the clock ticking down and when this damn thing has to go to press. But that's one of the few things I will push back on. I'll just say, look, you know, I'm sorry. But it's like once you introduce a different font for this guy, well, why are we having a different font for that guy? And I'll be honest with you. I mean, I only know this because I made an enormous rod for my own back once. I did a book, and in the first, because the other thing is, letterers don't get to see the pitch, they don't get to see the series synopsis. You just sent a script.
Yeah.
And you've got no idea what's happening in issue 2. You've got no idea what's happening in issue 3. You just get sent the script, and you go, "That looks lovely." You get on with it. And but I got sent the script, and in the first issue, there's a human character, and there's a tribe of wolves, and there's a tribe of tigers, and they all talk. And I thought, well, obviously, the human's an isolated character, so the human gets a normal lettering style. Like if the wolves one's done, look at the tigers another style. That's lovely. Emphasises their isolation. Not having that sight of issue 2, I didn't realise that every issue of that was going to introduce 3 or 4 new kinds of animal. Having established that animals all have different fonts.
Oh God.
By issue 3, I'm buying new fonts to try and find type styles, and it's just, and I mean, I don't think it looked terrible.
Yeah.
And I tried to wherever possible, I tried to sort of use fonts that kind of looked like they belonged on the same page. But even so, there comes a point where you go, "Oh, for love of God, vampire bats! Oh, well, what kind of font does a vampire bat have?" Jesus.
One of the things I read about often, I've encountered myself, is one of the problems of being a letterer is when the artist is perhaps inexperienced and doesn't leave enough room for a balloon or the text to go in. How do you tackle that?
Yeah,
as best you can. But the way I go at it, and I occasionally see people moaning about that sort of stuff on Twitter and other social media. But the way I go at it is that my responsibility isn't to the artist. My responsibility is to the reader.
Yeah.
So as far as I'm concerned, I am there to deliver a clear, comprehensible reading order. I want you to be able to look at this panel and look at this page, and I want you to know where your eye's supposed to go, and I want you to follow the dialogue and the captions without having to worry about I want your eye to just glide through the page. And if that means that I'm going to put the caption or the balloon somewhere where the artist doesn't necessarily want me to, tough, you should have left space for it.
Yeah. Do you ever get any blowback by that? Do you ever get...
If you've thumbnailed it in, you'd know that that's where I'm going to put it. But they don't, and if they don't, then I'm afraid they don't get to complain about it. I've never had anybody really complain. I've seen occasional sort of passive-aggressive grumbling, which I can't really moan about because I do enough of it myself on social media. I thought, I think they might be talking about my lettering job,
but don't you ever get like the editor saying, "Oh, John's had a look at it and he just wonders if you might move it a bit because he's really happy with that gun he drew," or something? Is anything like that? Or
very, very occasionally, but right. Not really that often. But again, I think that's a product of how tight the turnaround time on most comics is now.
Because you've been at the end of the tail end.
I think the artists I think shut out of this quite a lot, which I don't agree with. It's this thing. It's the sort of relatively recent phenomenon of venerating the writer.
Right.
The writer will always get to see the lettered proof, and there's always approval and there's always changes coming back. I'm not sure the artist always does, which I feel, I don't feel that's necessarily right, but I can also understand with the truncated production time, maybe you just don't have time to do all that. But
okay,
yeah,
all right. You are really at the end of the chain, though, aren't you? That's the problem.
Well,
I
yeah,
suspect you're the one who has
next
editors.
thing that happens after the pages leave us is it goes to the production guys and they send it to print. That's it.
Yeah.
So, and that's the other thing I think that sometimes doesn't get appreciated, is that when the artist or the writer or the colorist delivers late, okay, you bought yourself an extra couple of days, but those 2 days have come off my deadline, because after my deadline there's the print slot, and the print slot can't be moved because that costs money to move the print slot. Because printing presses cost a fortune to run, and printing companies can't afford to have them sitting idle. So if you booked time on that and you can't fill that slot, they'll bill you anyway. So, and then they'll bill you again for the new slot when they do print it. So
I think Vince and I have worked in print for a few years, and the deadline is like big in our place.
Well, I think that's where I come from. I used to work in newspapers.
Okay.
And I used to work in a sort of a relatively small local newspaper where we dealt directly with the press, so I completely understand that. And so I will never ever give shit to production guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah.
Let me just make a note at the time of this because I need to send it to quite a few artists.
So I mean, the thing is, even though like a lot of us here have that sort of background in graphic design or print production or things like that, there's so many more creators out there now that don't necessarily have that. Even if you're an amazing artist and writer and stuff, you don't necessarily have this knowledge about certain processes. So for those sort of creators who have, they've created their own work, it's looking beautiful and they're about to letter it, what advice would you have for someone lettering something for the first time? What should they think about?
It kind of baffles me, to be honest with you, because so much of this stuff is available online. This information isn't secret.
Yeah.
That's the thing that gets me is there's like Blambot, as Nate Picos has articles all over his website. Comic do. Although my blog is horribly out of date, you could absolutely, it walks you through everything from prepping your script to finishing your page and doing it all in Illustrator. And this stuff comes up on a Google, and I don't understand why you wouldn't sit down before you start. Why you would just think, oh no, it's fine, I'll just do it, it's fine. I've seen a comic. How hard can it be? It's like, well, okay, but so. And it's just like using horrible fonts. I mean, Blambot, the free fonts that Blambot gives away are great.
They're so good.
And I was looking at them today.
I go out of my way every time, to contact Nate and say, no, sell me a license for this. I mean, I think he says unless you're using it, if you're not using it for a company like Dark Horse or Up, you can have it free.
Yeah.
And I always go to Nate and say, no, look, I can't just take your fonts for free. I'm getting paid for using it. Please, sell me a license because you deserve it. It's a lovely font. Please take my money. And it makes me quite cross when you see people using, well, Comic Sans or any sort of slightly comic looking font that came installed free on their computer. And well, you've got no excuse for that because when you Google comic book lettering fonts, like Comic Graphic Blambot are the number one and number two hits. So there's no excuse for not doing that. Yeah. Just get off your backside and do some homework. You wouldn't. Well, I suppose actually I've seen things where perhaps you would try and colour a comic without understanding how to colour a comic, but people seem to understand slightly better. That's a technical process, and there's stuff you have to do, and you kind of need to understand what CMYK is and that sort of thing. But for some reason, people just think, lettering, fine. How hard can it be?
I mean, Nate put out a cheat sheet. I think it's like an A4 sheet, and it's like 5 rules.
Yes,
and he does the do's and the don'ts, and it condenses that. What you mentioned earlier about looking at your favorite comic and see how they do it and bring it to yours into one sheet, and you can look at that and check it off against your own stuff and see whether it's going to fly or not. It's really generous of him.
Oh no, it's fantastic. And I'll be honest with you, I mean, went back when I was more or less piecing this stuff together myself. I was I'd talk on forums and things about, I worked out how to do this technique or that technique. I got quite a lot of pushback in the early days from professional letterers saying, well, don't give this stuff away, man. And it's kind of, well, somebody just knowing how to do this doesn't make them a good letterer. I was sat there we did a letter around table at New York last year, and I was sat talking to Marshall Dillon and Darren Bennett and loads of guys I really, really admire. And the thing I was saying was there's I can't articulate. There is such an accumulation of really tiny choices that makes good lettering.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's one of those things. It's like if you try and explain to somebody, oh well, you didn't do that, and you can look at it and go, well, that's not really important. A half a point of line spacing. You go, well, what? Eh? Well, that half a point of line spacing is the difference between when you bold a word, the bottom of those characters touching the top of the next line. That makes a difference. And all of these things, there's dozens of them. They all just pile up on top of each other, and somewhere down the line, you get hopefully good lettering.
Yeah, that air thing in around the balloons is a current bugbear of mine, dude. Is a lot of the sort of slightly more amateur letterers are putting so much in it. It's just you're looking at a page of white sometimes.
Yeah, God, that's awful.
Yeah,
really.
It's one of those things because it's kind of like I think we all look at those fabulous European books, which tend to have these wonderful, expansive, airy balloons, but they tend to be quite decompressed, a lot of them, and so you can sort of get away with it.
Yeah. I get you. Yeah.
But I was guilty of myself. I reined it back in because I did the same thing. I was sort of kind of slightly, sort of had one eye on all those wonderful bande dessinée stuff, and I was thinking, look at that, look at my wonderful airy balloons, and you do reach a point where you think, no, I may have overdone that a little bit.
Yeah. Do you have any sort of hard and fast rules in terms of? Obviously scripts and dialogue will change in length, but do you have anything that's like the maximum amount of words you will fit in an individual balloon? Do you think there should be any structure to things like that?
I don't think you will ever go far wrong with nothing annoys me because these rules are really simple and you can find them writ large all over the internet. Artists leave the top 25% of the panels dead space. Writers, 30 words a balloon, no more than 3 balloons a panel.
Right. Okay.
That seems to be fine. You got more than 3 balloons in a panel, write another panel.
Yeah.
And there are some stylistic things that seem to have come in relatively recently that I think there are a lot of writers working in comics and coming into comics now who aren't necessarily inverted commas comic writers. I think they think of themselves, they like to be comic writers but also TV writers and screenwriters, and one of the things that gets me a lot of the time is the reaction shot with somebody speaking out of panel.
Okay. Interesting.
Now that seems to be, if you've got more than 2 people in that conversation, that's intrinsically unclear. Yeah. Because if there's 3 people in the room and you do a reaction shot of one person and an off-panel balloon, you can't hear that voice. In TV or film, that works fine because you hear the character's voice, you know automatically who's speaking. Yeah. But unless the character has a wacky accent that you're phoneticizing, or God forbid, a fancy font, it's just an off-panel balloon.
Yeah.
I can see where the confusion comes in. Yeah.
It
doesn't work.
If you're smart, yes, you can write it so it's clearly a response to what was said before, but intrinsically, it's just a balloon intruding from off panel.
Yeah.
And you're making your reader have to stop and think about who is speaking to the character, who is reacting. Well, why not just... Especially because what you'll then tend to have is you'll get the reverse of that, and the character who was in shot previously not speaking, speaks from off panel, replying to the character who was not in shot speak. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Reverse it.
Well, why not just put the character who's speaking in the damn panel?
Yeah.
And then the next panel have the other one replying to them. You've achieved the exact same effect.
It's like a comics 2 Ronnies sketch. It's like the 2 Ronnies are doing a comic. That's
the mastermind thing.
Yeah. Answering the question before last. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd love to see a 2 Ronnies comic.
I'll get Prolix to draw it. He'd be all over that.
I was going to say, with the Prolix, Nick Prolix hand-letters his comics. I'm in awe of that.
He considers it. He's a big bande dessinée fan as well, Jim, and he does a lot of. Do you do logo designs and stuff like that? Do you as well?
Yeah.
And he hand draws a lot of his stuff. It's part of his style. He's a very sort of considered and a very good eyes, and it's part of his style. Would you consider hand lettering at all? Do you give it a go occasionally?
It's crossed my mind, and I have spent the last couple of years. I spent quite a long time trying to work on the steadiness of my hand and letter forms and stuff because I admire hand lettering. The problem is that essentially it doesn't fit into anybody's workflow anymore.
Yeah. It's very time consuming, isn't it?
It's not just it's time consuming and nobody wants to pay for it. I mean, it is.
Right.
I know a couple of letterers who will do it if they're asked for, but their basic lettering rate for hand lettering is 3 times digital.
Wow. Okay.
It takes 3 times as long. It's not an unreasonable thing to say. But also, you have to bear in mind that everybody's got used to these digital workflows, writers and editors especially, where they can just change stuff. Well, I'm sorry, if you're hand lettering a page, you can't come back to me when this book's lettered and say, I've changed a quarter of the dialogue on half the pages.
No, you haven't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't know when you think that's happening.
Yeah.
I was looking back at some old school hand letterers, and are there Gaspar Saladino? He's a bit of a sort of god of.
Oh no, the letterer's letterer, undoubtedly.
And for those who don't know him, he created the logo for Swamp Thing and House of Mystery, and he lettered Superman versus Muhammad Ali and stuff like that.
Arkham Asylum, that's the one that everybody will remember because people go on about different fonts for different characters, but Gaspar hand lettered all those mad styles that are in Arkham Asylum for all different characters.
And he lettered Toth and loads of different people, Infantino and all these sort of people. Is there anyone that you go back and look at in that sort of hand lettering period and think, I like what they've done there? Really,
there's a list. There's a huge long list. I mean, I was a little bit late to American comics to really get Gaspar. So Arkham Asylum is the one that I remember sticks in my mind.
Yeah.
But since I've got to know other proper, just come as proper letterers. Because we've got Letter Appreciation Day coming up on the 1st of September, and that's because it's Gaspar's birthday. That's when
Is it really? Wow, I never knew that. Okay, that's excellent.
But no, I mean the hand letterers. I grew up in 2000 AD, and the reason I'm a letterer is Dave Gibbons.
Well, okay. For those who don't know, he created his own font, didn't he, for Workman?
Yeah, but I was 10 years old when I started reading, or 11 years old when I started reading 2000 AD. Yeah. And he was doing Dan Dare. And my dad had been an Eagle fan, which I think is the only reason that he let me read 2000 AD, was because it had got Dan Dare in it. I think if he bothered to spend 2 minutes looking at these people getting disemboweled by dinosaurs, he probably didn't let me.
Yeah.
But he was a big Dan Dare fan, so my dad was on my Dan Dare, so I liked the Dan Dare strip. And there's something very appealing about Dave's very clean, very heavy black style that he was using back then. But also he lettered his own stuff.
Right.
And when he got his name on the credits twice, which when you're 10 years old, that's pretty cool. And for some reason, that was what made me pay attention to lettering. So I started looking at the letters and deciding which letters I liked and which letters I didn't. So then, you've got Dave, you've got Tom Frame, you've got Steve Potter. Steve Potter, everybody talks about Tom Frame as, and Tom was, the governor of UK comic lettering. But Steve Potter, bless him, I don't think ever gets the credit he deserves. I would urge anybody to go and look at the work that he did on the early books of Nemesis.
Oh, wow, okay.
When he did these wacky little scrolls. And Nemesis Book 2, the one that nobody talks about because Jesus Redondo drew it and nobody liked it, except me. But it's got these giant talking spiders in it.
Yeah.
He drew the speech balloons are webs. They're anchored to the panel borders by webbing.
Ah, yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
And I've never seen anybody do stuff like that with lettering. So that was all in my head. And then, a few years down the line, I discover, American comics.
Mm-hmm.
And I went into American comics via a friend of mine who used to buy from sort of the flea markets, used to buy the sort of the old Byrne Claremont Paul Smith.
Yeah.
So that's Tom Orzechowski, and Tom's insanely precise lettering.
Yeah. He was on that book for years, wasn't he? He was on all the way through to
about 30 years of X books. He was just non-stop. And Chris Claremont, for Christ's sake, who he never met a panel he couldn't cover with dialogue. It was, and I met Tom last year at New York, and he's a lovely man. He's an absolute delight, and he's wonderful and he's knowledgeable. And it's one of those things why if anybody ever says to me, if ever I'm moaning about being a letterer, to just remind me that last year I got to go to New York and sit down and buy Tom Orzechowski a beer and have a chat with him, and he was a delight. He was an absolute delight.
Nice.
But so there's Tom, there's John Workman, Todd Kline. There's an article I can never find a link to. It drives me potty because I remember it so clearly. But somebody made the point about Sandman. It was a monthly ongoing book that ran for 6 years.
Yeah, he led that, didn't he? Yeah.
It had no regular artist. Excuse me, sorry. And what this article was pointing out was that the visual constancy that carries through Sandman is Todd Kline's lettering.
Okay.
Because they changed artists every story arc.
Yeah.
You never got a guy on there for 12 issues even. It was, his story arc had 6 issues, his story arc had 8 issues, his it's 4. And they just kept changing artists. But Todd's lettering runs right the way through it and gives you this element of visual continuity that ties the whole thing together.
He did America's Best Comics as well, and I can sort of visualise his lettering from that as well, you know.
Yeah, I mean, and I say, well, I mean, there's a reason why Todd's won 18 Eisner Awards, just because
okay.
He's absolutely top of the game, and I wouldn't,
And are there any comics
nominated for an Eisner? But when I saw Todd's name on the list, I was like, no, that's okay.
Jim, are there any books or comics that have passed that you would have loved to have lettered? Is there anything that you would just that's what I want to get hold of and do that one?
It's my heart as a comic fan belongs to 2000 AD. It always has done.
Right.
Because that was a comic that shaped me.
Yeah.
And so I have done one 2000 AD gig.
Okay, is that all?
And I know I've done a couple of things for the magazine.
Right.
I've done one 2000 AD gig, and it literally was an emergency fill-in. I hope you won't mind me saying, but Simon Boland's appendix burst, and I got a phone call completely out of the blue from Tharg, saying, is there any chance you could possibly letter a strip for us, like today, basically? And I was like, well, Tharg calls, you go, yes, certainly, sir. How soon would you like it? He says, could you do as an episode of Strontium Dog by John and Carlos? And I was like, yeah, I think I could probably squeeze that. So although I would give my eye teeth to do a Dread,
right,
and that's the one that lives, in my heart as the sort of the top thing. Then I got to do a Strontium Dog by John and Carlos, and
it's not bad, is it? Yeah,
that's cool.
Wow. I mean,
I was gonna say, if you could kind of talk to yourself 20 years ago before you started doing lettering, what's the biggest or best piece of advice you could give yourself?
Do it 10 years earlier.
Right, okay.
I'm not joking. It's one of those things. People sort of say, it's not frightening going self-employed, because I packed in a full-time job to go and do it. Might just about have had enough work to cover for the income, but it was a bit of a punt, and but it was like, no, I was happier doing it. I was if it's something you enjoy doing and you think you can make money at it, I kind of go, well, what's the worst thing that happen? I have to go back and get another horrible job, but they're all horrible, really. So I wish I'd done it 10 years earlier. That's the only thing that I'd say is have a bit more courage of your convictions. Do it.
Right. Okay.
In terms of obviously you've done a lot of titles, and certainly some indie, some bigger. What are the sort of differences that you found in working with, say, like a full-on the comic professional and the publisher, rather than the self-publisher, the more indie sort of joints that you've done? What are some of the big differences?
To be honest with you, it's quite hard to. It doesn't divide like that.
Yeah.
Right.
It really doesn't. There's ways people work, and some people work in ways that are easy for you, and some people work in ways that aren't. And it doesn't divide like that.
I guess, and especially in this day and age, there's less of a difference, isn't there? There is with working processes and emails and everything. Everyone's more on the same level, really, aren't they?
But with bigger publishers, you are much more open. There are more levels of management and marketing.
Yeah. And
you're much more likely to get something. Sorry, and with licensed titles, and much more likely to get an insane set of notes back very late in the day because it's gone up to the office in Los Angeles and some executive has decided in his infinite wisdom he wants to rewrite the comic.
Right. Okay.
But you'll encounter licensed comics in a lot of different, quite a lot of smaller publishers as well, and they're all subject to that. But in terms of just generally speaking, working with creators, it's like I've done reasonable amount of work. For example, with PJ Holden. Doesn't matter what publisher you're working for. If PJ gets put on your strip, you're going to be fine because PJ just automatically leaves acres of space for lettering.
Right.
Because in the early days when he was self-publishing, he was lettering his own stuff, and he just looks at it and he thinks, well, if I was lettering it, I'd like quite a lot of space at the top of the panel, so he leaves it. From day one, I have never ever had a problem lettering an issue of Giant Days.
Right. Okay.
You know, and John came from web publishing. You know,
Yeah.
You know, and he put out, you know, he got his web comic and he put out, you know, limited runs of print editions of, but he hardly done any print comics.
Yeah.
I mean, he'd been doing the web comics for years, but he'd hardly done any print comics, and he'd been doing it for himself, writing and lettering his own stuff. So you'd think, you know, a lot of people write and letter their own stuff when they then just write the scripts, don't think about it anymore because they think, well, you know, it's somebody else's problem now. Never ever had a problem in 54 issues.
Yeah, and Giant Days is one. It's a brilliant example of, because I've become a huge fan of that over the past year. And there's a synchronicity between like the writing, the art, and the letters. It's like it's all working because a lot of it is it's mostly dialogue between characters, but the rhythm of it just works so well from panel to panel.
Yeah, and that all starts. I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm diminishing the sort of the work that Lissa and Max put in on that, but it all starts with the script, and it is all there in the script. And part of it is the fact that there's very rarely more than 2 balloons in a panel in Giant Days.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you never kind of feel like you're robbed. Do you mean you don't feel like he's skipping it or there's nothing happening? These characters are talking to each other all the time. And I have no idea. The one thing I will say is I think John Allison is a liar.
Okay, good.
A great many of his scripts come to me and they say first draft at the top of them. And I don't believe that you write dialogue that concisely in the first draft. I simply don't believe it. I think he spent a very long time paring that dialogue down to 25, 30 words a balloon. And then he just puts first draft at the front so everybody thinks he's a genius.
We've got it on record. We've got it on record. The Twitter war starts now. Oh dear. So, but what other projects have you got coming up then? I mean, this has been fantastic.
Yeah, nice.
You know, being a lettering nerd, this has been great, and I've certainly picked up some tips.
Much too kind.
But I mean, you've got
coughed for half of the podcast.
or maybe you haven't. It depends how much editing I've done.
Yes. I just kept quiet about that, really.
Yeah. Every time the foghorn kicked in. But obviously you've got plenty of work on the go because you're a full-time letterer, which is a task, you know, that's brilliant in itself. Yeah. Because there's probably a lot of people out there who would think, wow, you can be a full-time letterer? You know, I mean, it does mean you've got to juggle a million jobs at once. But what sort of stuff have you got on the go now or is coming up? What's your schedule like for the rest of the year that you can talk about?
It's one of those things. It's a bit difficult, and I will also worry that when I say, you know, oh, this and this, I will immediately get emails or.
You'd be on bleeding call or something immediately.
Bastard!
Yeah.
Why didn't you mention this and this and this? And some great stuff coming up from Vault. I will say.
Oh, Vault! Oh.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're fans of them.
I'm wearing a Vault t-shirt.
We do a lot of work to Michael Morecia, who I have worked with almost since day one.
Nice.
Mike and I go so far back; it's quite frightening. He's got a sort of co-writing with. Damn it! I should have his name to hand, but I haven't. And a book called The Mall, which is
they've released images of it.
Come out the first. Anyway, and that's mental, and I'm really enjoying that. But also, he's got a horror book with Tim Daniel, The Plot.
I'm so glad you mentioned this because this is one of the books that I'm actually really excited about. I know essentially nothing about it, but it sounds absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I think isn't The Mall out today? Didn't it come out today? I've got a feeling it's.
It might. Embarrassing. I actually have a box of comps downstairs that I haven't opened yet. That I suspect may have come from Vault. So
the classic comic professional.
Yeah.
That's the thing nobody warned me about. I mean, last year.
Free comics.
Last year I had 6,500 pages of comics.
Oh my God!
And you have to bear in mind that's about 300 books.
Right.
Wow.
But I don't just get the 300 books. I get the variant covers.
My God!
What's your address?
Every 5 issues, I get a trade paperback. I have a spare room that looks like the stock room of a comic shop. It's insane.
Jim, what's your address?
So when are you going to start lettering, Tony?
Yeah.
Sorry, you go back. The Vault stuff is great.
Yeah.
Right, good. Yeah.
I know it's basically done now, but I'm going to mention Giant Days because I'm so insanely proud that it won 2 Eisners this year. And, you know, I think it's been nominated 5 times.
Right.
In the run-up, and I say you're not supposed to have favourites, but I'm sorry to everybody else I work with. It is my favourite book. It's the best thing that comes across my desk every month, and that's not denigrating any of the other fine books that come across but the fact that I got to do 54 issues of this, and
that's great.
Got punched through a wall. The worst thing that actually happened in the entire run is that somebody fell off a wall and broke both ankles. That's the most violent thing that happened in 4.5 years. And just the fact that an ongoing monthly comic sustain itself without having to do any... I love superheroes, I love action, I love horror, I love all that stuff. But at the same time, the idea that I can, that Boom can put out this book where more or less 3 young women go to university and faff about a bit.
Yeah.
And it runs for 4.5 years, gives me hope for the medium because it's just like, because it's just fantastic. And I can't explain to people why it's fantastic. I can say, but every time you say to somebody, you should buy this, and they buy it, they always come back and say, oh, thank you for saying you should buy this because it's great.
Yeah. It's definitely been one of the highlights of my discoveries over the past few years. And like you say, it's wonderful that, especially kids going to uni in the UK has just been a big worldwide success as well, because it's good stories just travel, don't they? It doesn't matter where you are or what it is, as long as the quality's there, and people will be there for it.
Comic readers, we read any genre, don't we? That's the thing. We don't really mind. It's not like a novel. People who read novels only read westerns. We'll read anything pretty much.
No, it's bizarre, isn't it?
Yeah.
The last thing I promised. The last thing I'm going to say about Giant Days, because if Todd is this, he'll just I can't be too nice about him. But the thing that I come back to every time, the reason I think it's got legs isn't because it's funny, although it is funny.
Yeah.
I think it's because it's 2 things. I think it's wise and I think it's kind.
Okay.
There isn't a harmful or a malicious bone in its body. It never really punches down.
Yeah.
Even the assholes who get their comeuppance don't get horrible. Nobody ever gets fed into a meat grinder or has a jumbo jet fall on or anything. It's just.
Yeah.
I think it's kind. I think it's got a good heart, and I think that's why people love it more than anything else.
Yeah. People expect like a comic about kids going to uni. It's going to be like an episode of Skins, but with this, whereas this is just funny and it's just really nice and sweet natured. Yeah. What about conventions and stuff? Do you go to many conventions as a letterer?
I'll be honest with you. The list of conventions that I've meant to go to. It's an awful lot longer than the list of conventions I've actually managed to go to, because we all work on volume.
Yeah,
that's the way we make our money, because page rates are so low for lettering. We all work on volume. So those of us that make a full-time living at it, we do a lot of books, and we do them all, as I say, because we're at the end of the production chain. We do them all in a very tight turnaround. And I'll be honest with you, half the time I book the convention and then I cancel it because I can't make it.
Where are you based, Jim? Are you based in?
I live in Nottingham.
So no, not going to Nottingham Comic Con. That's coming up soon, or?
I went to the first Nottingham Comic Con and I did a very well received by the 6 people who were there talk on lettering.
Good.
Sounds like one of our panels.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was lovely, and I had a smashing time. And I meant to go the following year, and I couldn't because I had to work all weekend. And I meant to go the year after that, and I couldn't because I had to work all weekend. And and I'd love to go. When is it this year?
It's I've got it
October
in
the 19th.
There you go. Yeah.
So, yeah, we've got to take.
We'll be there.
So that's between. I am going. The reason why I went to New York last year, and the reason why I'm going to New York this year, is because it costs such an insane amount of money to go that I actually feel justified in going to my editors when they say, "Oh, could you just?" And I go, "No, I'm terribly sorry. I have flights and accommodation booked. I really, really can't cancel this." And that's why but yes, so that's between New York and Thought Bubble, which I am determined I never do Thought Bubble. I've booked it about 3 times now and not gone. So I'm definitely doing Thought Bubble this year, and I'm definitely doing New York. So, but yeah,
I'll be at New York. Jim, come and say hello.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm on the. If you come by the No Brow stand, I'll be on the No Brow stand. So
I'll find you. That'll be fantastic.
Yeah, nice one, man. Good.
And we're going to be at like Nottingham and Thought Bubble. So we'll definitely have to seek you out.
We'll go anywhere, Jim. We're just like comic whores.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just going to be mooching around Thought Bubble, so I will come and try and come and find
nice
you.
one.
Amazing,
Good.
amazing.
But I mean, in my head, I want to go to all the comic conventions, but when I actually, I've cancelled too many non-refundable hotels and written off too many non-refundable train tickets to sort of.
It burns you in the end, doesn't it? Yeah. And anyway, like, you're busy making comics, so we all understand. So that's fine. But, for those people that aren't going to see you at convention stuff, where can people, find you online, etc.? Where can people find out more of your work?
Mostly I'm on Twitter.
Okay.
I can't help myself. It's a sickness mostly. I have to try and get this right. I'm at Campbell Letters.
Nice and easy to remember.
There you go.
Because all the easy ones had gone because I was quite late to Twitter. So I was trying various combinations of my name and no, you taken. It was either that or something with an 8-digit string of numbers at the end, and people just thought I was some kind of Russian bot. So
I still think that, Jim. I'm still.
Yeah. This has just been a test.
Stay where you are, comrade. The people we're calling to.
No, this has been brilliant though, Jim, and I know there's going to be many of our listeners who have recognised your work and not even realised that they've read your work. So I'm sure you'll get a few kind tweets over the next few days after this show goes live. And you're welcome back anytime, sir.
We're looking. That was gold, man.
Yeah, we're looking forward to seeing you. I feel like we've only just scratched the surface of lettering, and we always come back to certain subjects eventually, anyway. So this isn't.
Sorry, I was going to say it's been a genuine pleasure, gentlemen. I'm so pleased you asked me. So
thank you. Cheers, Jim.
We'll share a beer at a comic convention very soon, my friend.
I'm very much looking forward to it. But if I don't catch you at Nottingham, then say either New York or Thought Bubble.
Yes, that's brilliant. Yeah,
excellent.
There you go, folks. What a cracking chat that was.
Yeah.
Tell you what, we're doing well. We are doing well on this process journey that we're on.
It's good, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I like the fact he's like such a busy geezer, but he's had time to come on and give us some advice. That was good. He's clearly
thousands of pages of comics. Think about that.
Mate. Some people don't read that many.
Yeah. Well, he doesn't have a chance to read them.
Yeah.
One of the takeaways I'm getting from these shows is prep in your work.
Yeah.
Don't just kind of like, let's do it and get involved. It's like laying down the groundwork before you get kind of stuck in. That seems to really, really be something.
Especially if you're
type stuff and send it off, isn't there? There's a lot of that going on.
Yeah. And especially if you're a creator, we always talk about, we're doing this in a spare time and, we're loving it, or, it's essentially a hobby or whatever. But, we know there's a lot of you out there that genuinely are thinking, right, I want to try this full time, or I want to give this a serious shot. Then you need to heed advice like that. You need to be prepared that, you have to step up your game. And now I say this as someone that hasn't stepped up his game. but
yes,
then
you have.
But what I mean is I'm not going into to try and be like the comics professional, and I'm not doing that route yet. I say yet because you never know. But if you do, then you've got to change your plan. You've got to change your way of working.
It's getting the comics out the door.
Yeah.
I mean, if you spend days and days and days making the best comic page ever, but it doesn't get in the issue like the Image guys,
you
it fucks up.
Yeah, and you need to work at your craft. Obviously, Jim has worked on a lot of comics. We've read a lot of comics. I mean, he's been, like you say, Giant Days has been on for like 50 odd issues and stuff. He's getting all this work because he's very good at it, and he's been tested and he can meet a deadline. As soon as you're reliable, you get work.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
people need to pay more attention to that deadline thing.
Yeah.
It's now that I'm editing a few books, it's my main woe in life.
Yeah.
Yeah,
deadline.
it really is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My from years of working in production, if the print deadline's 4 o'clock on a Friday, tell them 4 o'clock on a Thursday.
Yep. Yeah.
I said, I don't think I'll be able to get to you till Friday at 9. So, oh fuck, I'll call you back. Let me call the printer.
Yeah.
And then just sit there 5 minutes. Yeah, I've called them up. We can do that just if you get it in that time. Yeah. Oh, thanks, Dan. You're the best.
Yeah.
It's like Scotty in Star Trek always over exexaggerating how long it takes to fix the engines.
Yeah. Fine. Here's a little bit of advice. If maybe you're collaborating with a lot of people, but you're the one spearheading like the print deadlines and stuff, find your print deadlines and tell everyone else it's a month earlier. Because you've got to organise it. You need to arrange it. If they have a deadline and they give you the artwork on the deadline, you still need to put it all together and to get it ready for print. So bear in
never
mind.
Tell them the day it's going to the printer.
Yeah,
I'll drive you nuts.
Yeah,
they'll get the letter at 9 a.m. that morning.
Yeah,
because we got ours went out when our clients we had to have it by 4 o'clock print, so they'd send you the artwork at like 3:30, 4:45.
Yeah,
and it's like no, it gets signed off at the printer at 4 o'clock.
Yeah,
I've got no time to do any of this.
No. But what we do have time for is to do some shout outs. So have we got any shout outs this week,
All the
gents?
time in the world for that.
All the time in the world. Wow, about 5 or 10 minutes.
About 5-10 minutes.
No longer, please.
What shout outs have we got this week?
Go on, D-Man. You got one.
Do I?
I don't know. Did you? I thought you said you had.
No.
Oh, okay.
I got the Gods of Men issue 2 sent through from Michael Phoenix, and I absolutely love it.
Oh, nice.
And that was coloured by the last show guest, Simon Robbins.
It was. Yeah.
Yeah.
How cool is that?
Lovely comic, and it's got the inscription to the man powered by 1,080s movies, Dan Guns Butcher, and then Michael signed it. That is nice.
Nice. I'll just give a shout out to. I was on another podcast.
You were?
Oh yes,
last week. Yeah. The final of the triumvirate. Is that the word?
That's the word.
That's the word. The circle has been completed because all of us have now appeared on an episode of Y Comics with Stuart Mulrain. Stop making that noise, Tony. Not everything
that's
is.
the only show
that's that noise.
Oh no, tell a lie. Sam with George London's done it on the what do you call it? Comics for the Apocalypse.
Yeah.
You might have done it on the show.
We're a package deal. We're a package deal.
One in, all in. It's like putting the cock and the balls in. You got to do it all.
What?
So talking about farming.
And we've hit the farming segment of the show.
It's your speciality subject.
Yeah.
And what's yours? Being a
twat, yeah.
You need a good length to get a good ploughing, don't you?
Tony.
That's a Blue Peter joke.
Have you got a Blue Peter badge?
I do. Do you know what?
I knew you would have. I
tell you what. I bought as a present some Blue Peter badges once. Yeah, I'll tell you the story afterwards. Yeah.
I thought you could only get Blue Peter badges if you're in like the club or something.
Hey, buy them off eBay.
Oh God, my childhood has just been a sham.
I tell you what, I look forward to listening to this story.
Yeah. Anyway, yes. So I appeared on an episode of Y Comics with Stuart Mulrain. He of True Believers and the Nerds That Haunted Themselves. Thank you very much for having me, Stu. I cannot tell you what I said on that episode, so you're gonna have to.
Listen, inspired by your episode.
Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, but that was only because I. What did I call you, Tony?
You said he said, "Oh, Tony's done an episode where he recorded it," and he went, "Yeah, but that's like giving a lighter to a baby." So I drew a picture of a baby with a lighter and sent it to you.
Yeah, I want that original, by the way.
It's yours, my friend.
Beautiful.
That show we recorded was partial train wreck, and then it found its feet.
Yeah. Yes.
It started off with me going, I don't know what I'm doing. Here we go.
Yeah, because Vince always does the beginning bit, and then once we sort of got to the middle bit, it was all right.
Yeah. We had some friends on. They were right.
Yeah. But okay, Tony, you've got some shout-outs, haven't you? Yeah,
I've got two shout-outs. The first one I read, The Fragment, the Cambridge File today by Mr. Falp, Lettered. There you go, because we're talking about Letter. It's by Mike Stock, previous guest. We're all pals with Falpy, and this is a cracking book. This is like,
nice.
Imagine The Prisoner mixed up with The Dark Knight and an assassin book. It's got a bit of pulp about it. There's a couple of pages in it that I just thought were really good. He does, obviously it's all good, but there's one double-page spread which is a man losing his mind, and it's just really cool. It's really good, really well made, and a cracking little series. And Falpy is a character. He's an artist and a writer who needs watching, mostly because I'm doing a book with him. So there you go. Watch out for that. There you go. The other one I've got is just keying up a little interview there that I did for people have heard me me talk about Luke Healy's Americana on my previous episode, and it comes out. I think it's getting released at Hackney Comic and Zine Fair, where Luke will be appearing and doing a signing.
What date is that one? What date is Hackney?
It's the 8th of September.
8th September.
Just around the corner from the Nobel offices, so nice and convenient in the arches there. And he'll be along to do some signing and some sketching, I'm sure. And Luke and I are pals, and I did a little interview with him over the Skype. It's only about 10 minutes long, but we had a chuckle. And here it is. Okay, so I'm here with Luke Healy. Luke is the creator of How to Survive the North, Avery Hill's Permanent Press, and the about to arrive on people's doorsteps, as I understand it, Americana and the Act of Getting Over It, which I love the little subtitle there for that, which sums up much of the book. It's good to chat to you, man. We did a panel a few years ago.
Buffable.
We had a chuckle on there. Should we just get into it quickly? I was reading a little bit up about you, and I realised that you studied journalism and then you studied art.
Yeah, that's true.
Is Americana? It's kind of the co-joining of both of them, isn't it? It's like the child of those two degrees, isn't it?
A little bit. I think like more and more, because when I studied journalism, I hated it and was terrible at it. I only ever had one job as a journalist. I lasted for 8 weeks, and I was the like gossip writer. So I was like writing about like Kim Kardashian, and it was like a nightmare. I hated it, and so I quit and decided to do comic books instead. But yeah, I think like the further I get into my sort of comics making practice, the more I realize how influential studying journalism was on my work.
Okay, yeah.
And there's a lot because How to Survive in the North is like largely nonfiction as well.
Okay.
And I think there's just something about the like I think even just the sort of general tone and like I don't know, snappiness of my work owes a lot to teachers insisting that every sentence I write for articles had to be like 10 words or less,
Okay, interesting. Yeah. So for those who haven't, I've read Americana and loved it, man. Absolutely brilliant. Yeah, I was just reading through it again this morning. I've even got little post-it notes of bits that made me chuckle.
Oh my goodness.
For those who haven't so far read it, do you want to just give us a little summary of what it's about?
Sure. So it basically tells the story. It's an autobiographical book, a memoir, that tells the story of when in 2016 I hiked on the Pacific Crest Trail from Mexico to Canada, and then more sort of broadly, the book is about my relationship with the United States growing up in Ireland and sort of being really obsessed with it.
Okay, because you ended up going to college there as well, didn't you?
Yeah. That's where I studied comics.
Right. Now it's You describe it as a trail. It's slightly more than that. It's basically almost the length of a continent, almost, isn't it? It's pretty.
It's 2,660 miles, and it runs from the Mexican border in California to the Canadian border in Washington. So it goes up the west coast through like national and state parks.
Wow.
And it sort of goes through like deserts and high mountains and forests, and it like sort of wiggles back and forth as it goes up. I'd tell you what, like more than anything, it was an amazing experience. I'm so grateful, and I feel very privileged to have gotten to do that. But like even when I was on it, I was just so marveling at what a feat of like engineering it is. Like just the like, how do you build a path that's 2,660 miles long? It's crazy to think about.
It really is, isn't it? It is incredible. And
it's unbelievable.
But it's also like, it's funny in parts. I mean, I was chuckling earlier about you trying to buy thermal underwear and they only had extra small.
Oh yeah.
You gave it a go anyway.
I succeeded, I guess. I still own those underwear. They're really warm. They don't fit me anymore, though.
But it's so grueling, man. It's so like everyone who's read this I know of is just really feels for you. You know, it's like you put yourself through something there, didn't you?
It's like it's one of the most sort of fun and enjoyable things I've ever done, but it's definitely one of the most difficult. But just physically, you never get a chance to rest. You have to hike basically every day for the whole. It takes about 5 months. Wow. To do the whole thing, and you just have to get up and hike 20 miles every day, no matter what, even if you're so tired. And I think something that I wasn't ready for, which I think I say in the book, I can't remember, is like when I'd sort of been preparing to do this for a long time, because you got to be prepared.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. Yeah, that's. Yeah. You
I'm
just buy a new pair of walking boots and set off, can you? It's.
No, you gotta really prepare, because you have to like learn enough about the trail to understand how to like manage your time and resources to like successfully do it.
Yeah.
But you've also got to be in you don't have to be in great shape, because I realized fairly quickly after I started that I was in horrific, terrible shape actually. But I sort of at home in Ireland was like, I'll hike about a bit, get some practice. And so I did these like 5 mile sort of like hikes every day. But hike is the wrong word, because they were on a flat path. There were like these canal trails.
And at a reasonable temperature, I'm guessing.
Flat. Yeah. I was so stupid. But then I arrived in America, and it's like up and down constantly. You're never on a flat gradient the whole trail. And so it's just the first day I was like wiped out. I was like, oh no.
I know this is a moment where you literally say to someone, is it possible just to melt?
Yeah. It's so hot, because it starts in the desert, like full desert.
Right.
Like you sort of think about it like, oh, desert, oh yeah, no, oh, it'll be like sort of scrubby wasteland, blah blah blah, and it is that in parts, but it's like, I can't do the conversion in my head. All my memories are in Fahrenheit from there, but it's like over 100 degrees. Wow. It's so hot. There's no shade. Like you just can't. You can't think it's so hot. It's really wild. You have to drink, so much water, which means you have to carry so much water. Your bag is so heavy, and then when you think it's like, the desert is the first 700 miles, and just when you're getting to the end, you have to go into like the true like Mojave Desert, like sand dune, Right. It's really it's wild. It's wild that people were like, yeah, let's put a hiking trail here.
Yeah, mums and dads. Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. It's amazing though. It's a really cool. I'd never seen anything like that in my life. So it was really a first-hand diving in at the deep end experience. It was cool.
I mean, you nail a lot of the detail. There's a lot of detail in it. For example, one of the things I love about it is the little nicknames that everyone has.
Oh yeah.
There's like Centerfold, Spoon. I think Spoon's a great nickname. Chuckles. So these people you come across. Did you draw some of it or take notes as you were going along? There's a lot to remember there, isn't there? Even just the sort of landscapes that you draw in the book.
Yeah, I didn't take any notes.
Okay, right.
Yeah, well, before I went to do it, because I had been preparing for a while, I actually pitched a couple of places on me keeping like a comic sort of diary as I went along and publishing it. Like I pitched like the Nib and Vice and stuff, who I'd done a bunch of comics for, and the sort of sentiment that I got from everyone was like, we don't think you're actually going to do this.
Really?
We think you're going to start and then quit. Which, by the way, that would have been a good story too. So they should have just published it.
Yeah, kind of would have been. Yeah, I'd read that as well. Yeah, definitely.
But so I basically was like, and I was just coming to the end of having. I basically left to go do the trail like a month or two after finishing work on How to Survive in the North. So I was so burnt out on comics, and I had been working on that for 2 years, like in my parents' house in suburban Dublin, just like.
Right.
Can I use bad language?
Of course you can. Yeah, please do. Yeah, we encourage it.
Yeah, great. It was fucking boring. It was so boring. And I basically, I remember reading this thing on Twitter. I can't remember, some cartoonist tweeted it, and they were like, the tweet was like, I wasted my 20s sitting inside drawing comic books. And that I was just like, oh, like it was so in my head, like, God, and so I decided to just go, and I was like, well, this has nothing to do with my job. Like, this is just something I'm doing for me to like enjoy it and have a new experience and have a good time.
Okay.
And so I was really resolute that I wasn't going to make any comics about it. So I didn't keep any notes. I didn't take any photographs. I took maybe 5 or 6 over the course of the whole trail.
Okay.
I didn't write anything down. And then I got back to Ireland after having finished, and I was like, oh, that was actually quite interesting. I probably should make a book about that. So I'm just a huge hypocrite.
You could never tell. You can never tell, man. The detail in it, you know, you would think, oh, he's got to have drawn the view from that hill or something, you know, stuff like that. You know, that's what I would have presumed.
It's like the thing is like that. It was such an unusual experience, like because I obviously don't do things like that in my everyday life.
Yeah.
And every day was just felt so visceral, and like all the memories obviously have faded now and are probably replaced by, you know, the way that I decided to tell them in the book, but. At the time, like, because I came back and started writing on it immediately, I could have told you every single place that I slept for all 149 days or however long it is. Like, I could tell you in order every mile marker that I slept on. You know what I mean? Where it just everything was so locked in.
Because it was just you for a big chunk of it. It's just you, isn't it? There's the memories are sort of stuck in there because it's just you and your thoughts for a lot of it, I suppose, is it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I hiked it alone, but I ran into people as you know, talked about in the book, and so I sort of like teamed up with them for the sections. And I don't think there was a day that I didn't see any other person, maybe 1 or 2 over the course of the whole trail, but a lot of the interactions you get, like you see somebody sort of like maybe coming the opposite direction, and you say, oh, hi, you talk to them for 2 minutes and then you're alone again. So the vast majority of your time you spend alone.
I get you. It's not a question. I just love the way you draw rain, man. I love a bit of rain in a comic. And just
it's so hard. It's so hard to draw.
It is, isn't it? But what you do is you successfully draw it hitting your tent on a number of occasions, but you also successfully replicate the noise of it on your tent a couple of times, which I really liked.
I love sound effects. I love red sound effects.
And my favourite sound effect of the whole book is when you end up, you kind of do a header into some snow and it just says "boff." Like,
oh yeah.
One of the best. Yeah.
That's I think when I broke my leg.
Right.
Which that's the one thing like looking back at this book, I think that I would change is like it's I didn't make it clear enough that I like broke my leg. I actually broke it. Like the bone was broken, and I just didn't realize until I got home to Ireland.
Okay, because you kind of bandage it, don't you? And then you've got a couple of walking sticks. You know.
Yeah, I just took a lot of ibuprofen.
Right. Okay. And the other thing you've done is you've done what you did with the last No Brad book you did, How to Survive, is you've done it as a kind of 2-color, and the 2-color changes depending on the environment and the time of day and stuff. Is that right?
Yeah, so the whole book is like, so it's red and blue ink on white paper, so it's like American flag colors. But that was a really late edition actually.
Okay.
I planned the whole book to be in black and white because I got really obsessed with this like sort of travel paperback like airport book aesthetic.
Okay.
And so the original design for the book was much more like that. It was like small. It was like supposed to be like a pocket-sized paperback on like cheap paper, like, you know, black and white.
Like fold it in half, stick it in your back pocket. Yeah.
Exactly.
Kind of thing, yeah.
And then, you know, and I'm to be clear, I'm really happy with the design of the final book.
It's lovely,
oh yeah, I think it looks great. I'm really, because the designer at Nobrow, Olivia, did a great job on it. But I think like it is really different than how I'd planned. So that all of that was like added pretty late, and basically they came to me like pretty near the deadline actually, and were like, "Hey, what if it was in color?" Nobrow likes to put books in color. I was like, "What? Like how? How do you want me to color this whole book? It's so long." And so then the 2-color thing was like kind of a compromise, but actually I'm really happy with how it looks. I think it's lovely,
and it really works as a soft cover. I really like that sort
of. Agreed.
I
hate hardback books.
Yeah, it's not manga, but it's kind of got that. I feel it's a sort of book you want to put in your rucksack and read on the train. It's not like a coffee table book, and it's got that feel about it. I think, you know, which I kind of like.
That's the remnants of that like travel paperback thing, I think, because that was my idea too. Like because I wanted it to look sort of like manga-esque, like almost a little cheap. Like that's why it has the screen tone. You know, it's sort of this printerly, like, oh, like you've just run this off a press. Like that's kind of the look I wanted, because I think it fits with the sort of tone of the story, because it is definitely this sort of rough and ready, like moving thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's we overuse graphic novel, but it's a novel, isn't it? That's how I feel about it. If this was a text novel, it would be the same to me. It would be the same sort of reading experience almost, because it's got that sort of
thank you.
paperbacky, which I really like actually. Yeah, I have to say. So I think I saw you tweet earlier today that this is landing on people's doorsteps as we speak. Is that right?
I think so. Yeah. So. I'm not sure when people will be listening to this, but the publication deadline is
probably
or the
next
publication
week
date.
from our next date. Yeah.
Oh, amazing! So if you buy the book anywhere from bookshops or Amazon or whatever, it'll come out on September 10th. But if you get it from nobread.net, it's out now.
Right. Okay.
As of today. So it's, I guess, shipping today, or maybe some people are receiving it. Although I will say, my mom just sent me a message yesterday that was like, there's reviews for it on Amazon. And I was like, what? Like, first of all, why are we looking at that? But also, like, what's going on? So I clicked on, and they're like advanced copies, I guess, that some people get on Amazon to review it. And both of them are very surprised that there's pictures in it.
Okay.
What they were told before they received it. They liked it, but they were like, there's pictures in this book. I do not understand.
What's going on in the world? What's happened? Yeah. Cool. And you're also appearing at the Hackney Comic and Zine Fair, as I understand it. Is that right?
Yeah, I'll pop in because I live in Hackney, so I'll drop in and sign some books, and hopefully some people will want to buy and read them.
Cool. And a couple of things, man. So where can we find you online? Let's do that one first.
Oh, sure. So my website is lukewhealy.com, and everything's linked there. Lovely. So I have like a Twitter and an Instagram, but I don't really use them very much.
Okay, cool. And I hope you don't mind me saying you're also working on a couple of shows in Edinburgh. Is there any of them currently at the Fringe? Is there any one you want to give a little promote to for the podcast?
Oh, sure. Yeah. If anybody is up in Edinburgh, go see Nordic Noir, 2 p.m., Gilded Balloon, Rose Theatre, cool. Or Thirst Trap, which is at 5:20 in Underbelly Cowgate. And they're both funny.
I know where that is. I've been to that one. Yeah. Okay.
I love that one. It's great. It's a really fun place to work, although the ceiling keeps falling in while we're trying to do it. So
that's the Fringe fee, I suppose, is it?
That's it. Outsider theatre, independent art.
Nice one, man. I absolutely love the book. A real pleasure to talk to you again. And I'll hopefully see you, because I'll be running the table at Hackney, so I shall see you there.
Oh, amazing. Yeah. I'll see you then. Nice one. Thanks so much for having me.
Pleasure, man. Absolute pleasure.
Well done, Tony.
Thanks, man. It was good fun, actually. He's really funny, actually. If you ever get to... he does a bit of stand-up and a bit of improv.
Oh, does he really?
He's really funny. I did a panel with him at Thought Bubble a few years ago, and we got to spend like an hour or so beforehand in the bar, and we did have a laugh. Yeah, and this book is so good, man. Talk about grueling, but yet fun and interesting, and it's a great book. It's really worth getting. Yeah, brilliant stuff.
Nice.
There you go.
So we've talked about the process. We've given some shout outs, and I think it's time to recommend something for you lovely people to check out for the week coming forward. Before you get the next show, what's that going to be? Ooh. Well, we haven't planned it yet, so we don't know.
We're not sure yet. It'll all fall together.
Yeah. So who wants to go first in terms of recommendations this week? Just as a warning, folks, we recorded this episode a mere couple of days after the last episode we recorded. So, for instance, my recommendations are going to be a bit shorter, because I am reading things like, for instance, Simon Robbins last week. He recommended Coda on the show.
Yeah, you bought that, didn't you?
Yeah, and I bought it, and I've just started to read it, and it's fantastic, but I can't do it justice without reading more of it. So
fair enough.
But there is another sort of I'm going to mention a mainstream series. A couple
you
of
do
series.
Yours. I've got a mainstream one as well.
Yeah. What can I say? There's a couple of series that I've bought mainstream, and the guys are going to know what I'm going to mention now. So Marvel titles. This is a Marvel corner of the universe that I haven't touched for a few years, mainly because it's convoluted, don't know where it is, new characters, old characters, dead characters, living characters, good guys, bad guys, or you just don't know where you are with the X-Men universe.
Yeah.
And with the with Jonathan Hickman sort of spearheading the writing of these new books, like House of X and Powers of X. They're the two titles that I've started reading. I know there's a lot more part of that lineup, isn't there? But
that's the start of a 10. Those two, they're the ones spearheading it out of the gate.
Yeah. So I picked these up, and purely, I think you picked up first, T. I think you got House of X 1.
Maybe.
And I think how great it was. I mean, we jumped in it straight away.
I mean, I'm much to my own shame, because the fucking quality's been not great on and off for years. I've bought X-Men comics since the 70s, but this, thank fuck for Hickman. I've been waiting for him to turn up and save this little corner of the universe that I love so much for so long.
And he
has not let us down at all.
It just feels like, from panel 1, as if they always say, like, you should be good to new readers. And Hickman stuff, it can be dense. There's lots of layers going on.
It's clever and detailed,
But if you get issue 1 of either of these titles, you'll be in from the ground floor. There's some characters that I didn't know as much as others, like, your Magnetos and stuff. But it tells you the story. You can already pick up. You already know where it's going. It impressed me so much. Plus, you get, because it's John Hickman book, you get the graphic design.
You get little clues and codes and extra material.
There is prose stuff in there. There is essentially file reports, and there is lots of stuff going on. You don't have to read that if you just want to read the comic. You just read the comic.
I love that the infographic stuff he's done.
I love
Someone
that.
was complaining about it, but it's like, well, it works. It gives you the information you need quickly.
Yeah,
and you're trying to condense so much X-Men kind of lore and legend.
Yeah,
and he does it on a double page spread.
Yeah,
and man, the art in it.
The artwork across the board, because and the thing is, House of X is almost a modern day story. As it were, it's sort of present tense, isn't it? It mixes up a couple of things, certainly with issue 2, with a character that I thought I knew and I clearly don't know.
Well, none of us did, I think. That's the thing with that character.
And I don't want. And that really surprised me.
You can't spoil it, because people read this in trade, though. That's the thing.
Yeah. And if you do get it in trade, you're going to be in for a treat. If you get
if I get this in trade.
Yeah. But also Powers of X, because of the good time I had with House of X, when I saw Powers of X was Jonathan Hickman as well. It seemed to looked almost like the same sort of book. Almost to the point where I thought it was issue 2.
That is slightly confusing. Yeah, because you do have to look closely to figure out which series it is.
Yeah, the art style is 2 different artists, similar sort of style. Both absolutely stunning. I haven't got their names just off the hand, but
I can't remember off the top of my head.
No, but we're talking like imminent sort of start level of this is just absolutely perfect. And Powers of X, I do not know. You've read Powers of X as well, haven't you?
Yeah.
I've not read.
I'm current apart from today's issue.
That deals with time, and we're talking huge jumps in time. It's messing with different periods of time. And there's characters in it. Are they new characters?
Some are, some aren't. Mostly they aren't. There's which one are you thinking?
There's a few people from the future. There was one with a sort of a broadsword type thing. The sort of warrior type one.
I'm trying to place who you mean there.
Oh,
dude.
God.
Sorry, the artist
looks a little bit.
Pepe Larraz.
Looks a little bit like a sort of a female Colossus, you could say, in a way. She's got the huge sword.
I think she's new. The X-Men's so dense with characters.
Exactly. I don't know. And considering it's so far in the future, and I was just completely blown away by that as well. And I'm interested to see how it all ties in, because but the bad guy in that was one that I certainly haven't read a decent storyline with this bad guy. I don't want to. We can't say the name, can we?
Is he the one you're thinking of, sort of kind of first appeared when Romita Jr. was drawing? Is that the one?
Yeah, he I mean, let's say robotic.
Yeah.
That's all we can say. But but it's just such a good series. I was, I'm jazzed about the X-Men universe again. Well, certainly the storyline anyway. I have a niggle with and the lads have heard me rant about this, about the logo designs of the new X-Men series.
To be fair, now it's landed, I can kind of overlook that.
For these 2 books themselves, I let them. I think it lets them off because it's like a little stamp. But some of the I'm not convinced by the new X-Men universe.
If these were a series of different books that had separate storylines, I would be more irked.
Yeah.
But because you kind of have to read them all week in, week out, I don't mind it too much. But they're hard figuring out which is which sometimes when you see them on the shelf.
Yeah.
Look so similar.
Yeah. I mean, if you look in the back of the book as well, one of the things that I liked about the first one, the House of X, was at the back it gave you a reading list. And it very clearly says, this is this bit, this is, it tells you what's coming up and how to read it, which I think, I haven't read Marvel properly in a long time, but I don't know how clear they've been with that in the recent years. Have they been that clear? Have they always been that clear? It used to be crystal clear that, like, this is this issue, certainly with the X-Men in, like, the 90s and stuff, the next one...
Executioner's song and to jump around the titles.
It was Uncanny X-Men, and the next chapter was in X-Force, and then the next chapter was this. You knew there was going to be a... But I think that's the problem, the clarity of where you've got to go to continue the story, isn't it?
When this came out, there was a couple of X books I wasn't reading. I wasn't reading just a couple of the solo books I wasn't bothered with. But I literally, as soon as these two came out, I went in, saw Orbital, the first two, House and Powers, and I said, put all the X-Men books down in my pull list, because I know they'll all interlock now, but they are, and that's kind of been the problem with the X-Men books for many years. But these are the quality of these is enough that I'm quite happy to read them all.
Yeah.
Because I trust Hickman that much.
Yeah.
He's got some of the characters so well, man.
And also it's epic.
Properly.
Oh God, yes. There's some of the dialogue.
It's a fantastic concept for the series as well.
Yeah.
It's just like, whoa, you're going here, and blew me away. Like I said, I've been away from the X-Men for many years now.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I have. And every time I dip my head in, I was like, I do not know what's going on.
Yeah, I've read it for 45 years, and sometimes I look at it and go, what the fuck is that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, it's rare that we will talk about like a mainstream series at length like this.
Yeah.
But this one was just, pleasant surprise. And I know some of our listeners have started picking it up. And I
think there was some. I was reading some stuff like there was some like surprise in the industry that it done so well, and it's like, well, here's someone who gives a shit about it, who knows the characters, who's putting a lot of love and time and attention into the story, and it's interesting. It's not.
I have to say, Hickman's putting a lot of writers who were considered the big thing at Marvel to shame with these.
Absolutely.
Books. Yeah. There's a lot of people who need to start thinking seriously about being a writer compared to what this geezer is doing.
He also thinks big picture. He doesn't. If he's doing an issue 1, he's got an idea of probably what issue 40. The final pieces. So
one of the things I was reading this, like, there's a lot of comments I read and think I know what I'd do next, or I think I could do this. When I read this, I was like, how the fuck has he done this? It was this like everything was so well crafted, and I couldn't tell you where it's going. It was
Plus, he lets the artists sing. He knows that the artists can do their best work.
They're putting the work in on this, aren't they?
Oh,
Pepe Larraz, who's the artist on the two books I've read, he's putting the work in. They're fucking gorgeous. And there's slight redesigns, but not to the point where you think, oh, for fuck's sake, who's that? But, like, for example, just Magneto is now in a white costume. And it just looks amazing. It looks really good. He just walks in a room and his immediate presence.
And I tell you what, I haven't felt tension in a comic book so much in quite some time when Cyclops
Fantastic Four, you're
is talking to the Fantastic Four. That scene is it's almost like it's almost like Inglourious Bastards in the cafe, the restaurant sort of scene.
It's
that kind of
here's the trigger for like a world war.
But the thing is, like,
well,
Sue Storm wants a bit, doesn't she? I look at that.
Don't say it like that. But there's one panel where she's looking at Cyclops and you can tell she's like, hello.
Yeah.
I guess they've done Magneto in white because he's sort of been absolved of sin and he's now pure and he hasn't got any of that baggage anymore.
Yeah, but he's still Magneto. He's still Magneto. Yeah.
So when I said we were Homo superior, fucking look at us now, bitch.
Yeah. So,
oh man, I love the X-Men again, and it's taken so long.
Yeah,
that last Uncanny run was just a mess.
Yeah,
this is so good.
Yeah,
so happy.
Yeah. So there you go. That's my one.
Nice one.
Yeah,
Good.
You didn't think you had much to say, but there we go.
I know. I just thought, well, I've read them recently. Let's talk about that one. I didn't. Yeah, we're all so passionate about it. That's the good thing.
We did it without spoilers, so we did all right.
Yeah.
Dan,
I've got Our Final Halloween 2 to talk about. Back this on Kickstarter and got the digital award last week. I think I'm gonna have to buy all these in a collected format because I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Got issue 1. I thought that was like a one and done, but like all good kind of horror films, it's spun out because it's done so well. They've done a Friday the 13th Part 2.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really good. I think it's just morphed into 4 parts. I didn't think it was planned that way. Maybe I'm wrong there.
Yeah.
So in the second issue, it kind of fleshes out and gives context to what happens in the previous one. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the first one.
Yeah.
It's very much action based, and there's not tons of dialogue. You have to kind of like piece together what's happening through the story.
Yeah.
But the second issue kind of fleshes it out. And I tell you what, Mike does it's written by Mike Garley and art by Michael Lee Graham. Mike does a really good job.
Mike Stock does the letters as well, doesn't he? I think. So I think it's the triple Mikes. I think.
Ah, okay, nice one. I didn't see that in the credits. No, that's probably my fault. So the 3 Mikes do great, and Mike does great dialogue. He's got some little twists and turns in there. One of the plot devices, I think he's done this on purpose. If not, it's a great coincidence. They find out there's an evil coming, and it's from this house that we're in at Halloween, and it's going to come back next Halloween. So they've got 364 days in the comic to stop this evil and prepare for it.
Right.
So I presume they're going to be relaunching the other 2 comics, with the next one to be released next October to land on Halloween.
That would be great.
That's great.
But is this one out on Halloween then, or do you just get an early copy of it? Or
well, this one came out now, but then there must be another 2 before Halloween 2020.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
The story.
Yeah.
So there's a real timeline in the story of it's 360 days to go till Halloween, and the characters are doing something. They've gone to a funeral of one of the other characters, and then it counts down again, and it's closer. So I presume that as a plot device, that getting closer and closer to when this evil returns. It's really nice.
Yeah, I mean, Garley really knows what he's doing, but and it's just. But Mike Lee Graham with those colours.
He's just such on point.
Yeah.
It's really well done.
Yeah.
It's strange because he'll have like a limited colour palette of maybe 3 or 4 colours on one page, and then in the same scene where there's a kind of tonal shift, it's changed, but it's so well done. It really works. It's just he uses the colour to sort of like invoke the atmosphere and the drama and the horror.
Yeah.
And it really works.
It's a horror book that isn't afraid of a neon pink.
Hell yeah!
Like the magenta and stuff. That's what I love about it. It's not so lost in shadow and black ink, is it? This is vibrant and bloodthirsty and in your face and just great. Yeah, nice one, dude.
So if you want to check that out, go to mikegarley.com/store, and you can get the first one. And I think the second one's due up to be up there anytime soon. I'd really recommend.
Nice.
Yeah, look nice in print as well. I got a look at the copies in BAM. When he was there, so
okay,
cool. Really nice.
It frustrates me because I back comics from Kickstarter and get the print edition, think fucking hell, and then I get digital ones of others and wish I'd got the print.
Yeah, I do that a lot. Yeah. Okay, then Tony, take us away.
I've been mine's a bit of a callback. Because I went to the Mart the other day. I've been reading quite a lot of old comics, and this one came out at the same time as these titles. We had Dark Stars. We had Legion, the L.E.G, that one. Yeah. We had Supergirl and Team Luthor, and we had Blood Syndicate. So that's a period view. So that is
Blood Syndicate. Jesus.
Which one was Blood Syndicate?
That was the one in the universe with Icon and
all
that stuff.
Yeah.
And this is out of DC. This is Danger Trail, starring King Faraday. So it's a 4-issue miniseries, and I read them all the other morning. It's written by get these names. So it's written by Len Wein, art by Carmine Infantino,
nice.
Inks by Frank McLaughlin, colours by Linda Kachelhofer, letters by Clem Robbins, and Paul Kupperberg is the editor. That's not bad. That's a good little lineup. So most of my reading habits have been old comics recently, and I just thought, oh, fuck it. There's been a lot of talk about the 90s. I don't know, it just keeps coming up on podcasts and stuff like that, and in conversation with us even. We keep talking about the 90s, and I thought, I'm going to read a book from the 90s, and I picked this up because it had Paul Gulacy covers. Gulacy's on all 4 covers, and they are fucking gorgeous. And basically, King Faraday, he started out... he's been about in the DC universe for yonks. He's been in the Suicide Squad. He had his own title I think in the 50s. He was created by Robert Kanigher, but he's kind of the James Bond of the DC universe. Put it that way. He's kind of a bit like Fury. I sent you some of the panels of this yesterday, didn't I, guys? I think it was.
Yeah.
It's a little bit politically incorrect on occasion. You know what I mean? There's the odd moment where he does something that you think that's a bit lively, but it's very much a character of his time. He's also in New Frontier, and he is in Smallville. His character appeared in Smallville. I didn't watch all of Smallville.
No,
but yeah. This is done by Ween and Infantino. Obviously know what they're doing, but they're both old school. And whilst it came out in the 90s, it's got none of the 90s tropes about it. It's got none of the sort of big guns and splash pages and stuff like that. It could easily be a comic in the Silver Age. In it, Frank Faraday travels to San Madeira, which is a Central American made-up country named after something Len Wein was probably drinking. And basically, Faraday's got a gadget for anything. He's got an extendable pole that he uses to vault over a fence. This made me laugh. This is Infantino. I met him before he passed away, and he was very sweet to me. But he was famously quite a cantankerous individual. He was. I think he ruled DC with a bit of a sort of an iron rod or an extendable pole. And there's one scene in it where he's just drawn this bloke Faraday pole vaulting over a wall of the sort of castle of this character, and Len Wein's had to add the pole. Its tip sunk in the dirt outside quivers for a moment, but never touches the wall. And it just in the picture, it's just touching the wall. There's just no two ways about it. So I think I can imagine that Len Wein and Infantino, both big characters, have just gone, I don't care. I'm going to draw the next panel. It's like that. So it's a weird one like that. But he's got a polymer filament for killing the assassin. He's got a sort of blow dart thing that puts dogs to sleep. So it'll put the dogs to sleep, and they'll make it clear in the narration that the dogs are just sleeping. But then he just goes and kills people by strangling them with a polymer filament. So he's quite cool like that. He's mistaken, as it happens in all these good spy movies, for being the actual assassin, although he was there to stop the assassin, and he's chased off the island, and he uses a grenade. In this order, he uses a grenade, a hang glider, which he had hidden, and a submarine to escape. So that's not bad, is it? All in like 5 pages. Sarge Steele, who's a sort of regular in the DC universe, is his boss, and Sarge Steele is kind of one of those angry bosses of a spy. And every time Faraday rings him, it comes through on this intercom thing he's got on his desk, and Sarge Steele smashes it. And then Sarge Steele complains to his secretary, "Can you get me another intercom? I've smashed this one." And he says, he's just angrily, he says, what kept you, Faraday? And he says, sorry, the sub couldn't find a parking space. So it's all full of those sort of little Bond-esque little asides, So Faraday gets sent off to obviously rescue a Russian female spy, also quite sexy. And it's sort of that sort of cliche story, but it rattles along. It's good fun. It's spoilers for a 24-year-old comic, but we find out that the brilliant last page in issue 2 reveals that Cobra is the villain. So Cobra he's a sort of a busy guy, isn't he? We even get the cliched walkthrough of the Q area, with all the people climbing walls with their sticky shoes, or firing guns out of their pants, whatever it's going to be. You get that walkthrough as well. I mean, it may not be for everyone, but it's kind of a bit of nostalgia. The covers are just class Gulacy. I just love Gulacy stuff. I'll buy anything he's involved in. There's one, I stuck it up on Twitter yesterday. There's one of them sort of falling off the Eiffel Tower, and I know Cliff Cumber made a comment. And he said, if my editor said, right, you've got to have them fighting, there's 4 of them, whilst falling off the Eiffel Tower and strangling each other, he'd go, fuck off. Which is fair. So as it happens, when you fall off the Eiffel Tower, of course, you land on a hot air balloon, don't you, that saves your life.
Happens all the time.
There's always those loads of hot air balloons flying underneath
flying around the base of the Eiffel Tower. It's hard to find a picture of the Eiffel Tower about a hot air balloon.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I love Infantino, but he's more restrained. If anyone's read some of his later Flash stuff, like the Trial of the Flash, he goes for it in those. There's that's where a lot of that Speed Force, because it wasn't the Speed Force at the time, but that's where a lot of that stuff comes from. That the artists do on the Flash now. But Infantino is quite contained, and McLaughlin inking him. I think he holds him back, and it makes it into a more straightforward. Imagine a sort of restrained Steranko, and you've got a little bit of an idea. It's just fucking good fun. This is the sort of thing, and this cost me £1 at the Comic Mart. £1 for 4 issues, all really readable, and I read them over breakfast, and they're marvellous, and nice. I'll keep them. Yeah, so that's my one. Go to the Comic Mart, buy cheap back issues. They'll cost you a third of the price of a normal comic, and entertain you for a lot longer than a regular comic will these days. So
exactly. Yeah. That's definitely good advice. And this show's been full of good advice in some way or another, as well as like the nonsense and great comics. And thank you once again to Jim Campbell for joining us this week. Hope you all enjoyed that and got some tips or some ideas about what to do with your lettering. If there was anything that you wanted to discuss with us, or maybe you just want to tell us you love us, because we're all desperate, aren't we, for affirmation, as I said earlier.
Yeah.
Tony especially.
Yep, always.
Then you can email us awesomecomicspod@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter @theawesomepod, where we'll be probably talking about what we'll probably put a shout out for the next couple of shows, maybe for some questions. Well, I mean, normally we do that, and then we have such a fantastic chat with the guest over these process shows that we don't get a chance to ask the questions.
Yeah.
So apologies if we don't get to any questions, but you get a great chat at the end of it anyway. So yeah,
we hope to cover as broad as subjects as topics as we can in the chat.
Yes.
So
yes, and next week's show, I'll tell them in a minute. For now, they can follow us on Twitter @theawesomepod, or they can go to facebook.com/awesomecomicspodcast and join the group chat at Awesome Comics Talk. Just search for that on Facebook. Loads of great stuff going on there. Thank you for listening to us, whether it was on the website awesomecomics.podbean.com. Leave us a review on iTunes, or just subscribe and share and just spread the word about this show so more people can learn and just find out a bit more great comics. Likewise, thank you if you listen to us on networks like Spotify, Stitcher, Podnose, Podknife. What other networks are we on, Tony?
Pod on a top.
And nice.
Thank you.
And, yes, as I was about to say, the next stage of the process shows, we're going to be talking about editing.
Yeah.
Yes. We've got the guests lined up. So we're going to be talking about that. That's going to be interesting. So we are literally going through as many processes as we can. We've probably missed a few things. There's going to be things that we haven't talked about. But of course there is. That's why we're going to keep making these shows. So look forward to that one. Because I know, especially now, Tony stepped it more into the sort of editing role, haven't you, Tony? So
I've been doing a bit recently. Yeah.
So look forward to that.
I'm definitely learning in the role. So I think we're all open to learning.
Yeah, we're all learning with every show that we're doing. Which is fantastic. But anyway, that's next week. For now, where can people find us online, on Twitter, etc.? Tony.
Neverondanything.blogspot.co.uk, SOYEZOHYZ on Twitter.
Brilliant. What about you, Dan?
And I'm on Twitter @Vanguard Comic, and you can read Vanguard at vanguardcomic.com.
Yes. You can find out, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram @JesterDiablo. You can find out more about my comic at theredmaskfrommars.com. Thank you once again to Jim Campbell. Go forth and have a look at the credits of your comics and see who did the letters.
Yeah.
Because
I didn't do.
Because you never know, you might be surprised how many times that name comes up in some of your favourite books. So there you go. There's your homework for the next week, folks. So until the next episode, thank you very much for listening. From Dan, Tony and myself, go forth, read loads of comics, have a brilliant week, and as always, what do they do, Dan?
Stay awesome.
Bye everyone.
Bye.